All right, everybody, welcome back to the dojo. Come on in, take a seat at the mat, and kick off your shoes. I've got an awesome guest with us today. Gary Grunow is with us, and I first became aware of you, Gary, just on some other podcasts, actually, and then seeing some videos over on the Beast, and definitely connected with your story and your style and yeah, and then we kind of hooked up through a mutual friend, and here we are. So welcome to the dojo, man.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So why don't you give a little intro to anybody who might not know who you are? It's probably only a few, but just in case.
It's all right. Yeah, my name's Gary Grunow. I've been hunting since I was 12 years old. Uh, I've shot probably mid 30s, 34-ish bucks over my life here. Um, yeah, got into hunting through my dad, who was strictly a meat hunter. Got into the outdoors. We used to live in Alaska actually for a short time when my dad was in the military. So I started being able to do a little trapping with him in Alaska and fishing. And he used to do some snowshoe rabbit hunting, and I used to bring a pellet gun. Never shot anything with it, but it's just cool to walk in the woods when you're like 6 years old with a pellet gun. But I fell in love with the outdoors. Did a lot of fishing, always loved hunting, and continued that going forward now.
Yeah,
And 51 now and still loving life, still going full bore.
yeah, that's
So,
awesome. So, and I did a little bit of kind of like research before, and I listened to the podcast that you did with Jake Bush on the Latitude podcast. If you get a chance, go back and listen to that one because it's a really awesome podcast. But in that podcast, you talk about like kind of making a transition. Um, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years ago. Is that accurate?
yes,
Yep.
yes. I actually made a bunch of transitions over my life, but that was the latest transition. Yes,
Okay. And then that was the one where you started targeting like 4.5 and older as far as like mature bucks go.
yes,
Yep.
yes.
And
Yep.
and then it's gone really well for you.
Yeah, I've been real lucky. Obviously, being part, of the hunting beast, learning a lot from Dan Infolt and Josh Tolker and everybody who I've met along the way has all kind of helped me, reach my goals, and hopefully I can keep reaching them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. It's great. I love it.
So how did season go for you last year?
Okay, it was a rough one, man.
Yeah.
Started off in Nebraska doing the Battle of the Bulls with the hunting beast guys. Saw a lot of deer. Never stepped foot in Nebraska in my life. Never been in such vast amount of ag in my life.
Hmm.
So it was a huge learning curve. And just as I was getting to the end of that week, it things really started clicking. I really started getting on something. It's tough. It's tough.
Hmm.
You're going into an area you never seen, never hunted before. You e-scout it as best as you can, and then you start putting boots on the ground and throwing some hunts out there. It was tough in the fact that it was over 100 degrees, and um, there was a bunch of different seasons that opened up at the same time, not just bow season. A lot of dove hunters in those areas, squirrel hunters. So it makes it tough. So
Yeah.
when you think you got something figured out, all of a sudden somebody comes in for dove hunt and changes things for you. So
Yeah.
it was a hoot, though. I'll be honest with you. Um, Rendell Eric came there and hung out with me for the week, and then of course Josh Tolker and um, we had a hoot. Josh's dad just had an absolute blast, but I did not shoot anything there. I left some smaller bucks go by, lots of does, small bucks, nothing that I was willing to put my tag on.
Yeah.
So that was the first week of September, and then we ended up all the beast guys ended up at my place for opening week of bow hunting. Nobody put a tag on a buck. My son shot a doe, but we of course had a hoot doing that too. So then October 1st rolled around. I ended up by Josh Tolker with a bunch of other guys. Um, I shot a dandy buck. Um, and if you haven't seen the video, that is on Before the Echo. It got onto some private land, and I could not obtain permission to get in there
Oh,
and get that buck. So it was a rough deal.
yeah.
Had a lot of people say just go in there and get it. Um, yeah, better to ask for forgiveness and permission, but I
Mm.
will not do that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too.
So I ended up not getting that deer. Um, and then I ended up for my vacation. I started off in Illinois, never stepped foot in that state either. And I shot myself a dandy 4.5-year-old eight. So I was real happy about it. 4 straight days of pouring rain. Actually thought that I wrecked my main camera. It started squealing. I did not get the kill shot because of the fact that it got so wet that morning. Um,
What was the
but
date on that?
uh, I'd have to go back and look.
Is that
Um,
mid October?
nope, late October.
Okay, late
So
October.
it's right around that Halloween-ish time.
Yep.
Um, then I shot over back as soon as I got that buck out. I shot over back to Indiana again and just a complete giant come out in the last like 5 minutes of the night. I put a shot on it. It's kind of my bad. It was operator error. I misjudged the distance and just took a little bit of skin right off the bottom of his chest. It looked great on the video,
Yep.
but after I recovered the arrow and followed the blood trail, and we did our best to see what we could find, it wasn't much of a blood trail, but he was a good one. And he would
Yeah.
have been probably my personal best.
Wow.
So ended up coming back home, doing some sits around here, and then our gun deer hunting started up, and didn't see anything. I only hunted for 2 days for a gun deer season. Um, and then that was pretty much a wrap for my season for this year.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a tough season. Did a lot of hunting, a lot of miles. Uh, but yeah, so I got the one in Illinois, and that's it. So
So you've been going, I think I recall that you've been going to Indiana now for a few years.
yes.
Besides Indiana, do you go out of state often or do you usually just stick to your home state?
I've only been going out of state, I think, for 4 years. Indiana was my first out of state hunt. And I was able to shoot a nice 5.5-year-old 8 pointer 2 hours into my hunt. Got lucky. And and then the next year, the next year, first 2 years, I only did Indiana, and then I started branching out. 2 years ago, I did a late season Iowa hunt and was able to put my tag on a dandy 10 pointer. Um, First time I ever hunted Iowa, late season muzzleloader. That's videos on the Hunting Beast. Um, it was just right after my dad passed away from cancer.
Mm,
Uh, so after that, last year was the first year I went to Nebraska. First year I went to Illinois, and obviously did Indiana and Wisconsin. And this year, the plan is, fingers crossed, Iowa again, Illinois for sure, Indiana for sure, and then Wisconsin. So
nice. Yeah.
it's a lot because, the problem with doing so many out of state hunts is that just when you start getting on them, you leave
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
So it becomes tough, but I don't care. I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah,
If I
it's
shoot a
fun.
little less bucks because I'm not concentrating so hard, I don't care. It's the adventure for me.
Yeah, I love the adventure too. I had a similar season as you did. I went to Nebraska. We were down there at the same time. I was in a different spot, and we were actually on the Bucks the whole time. Um, the guy that I was with, he killed within the first 30 minutes of the sit, and he shot a 130-inch full velvet.
Nice.
And then that kind of we took one car. I think that was the mistake because then the next few days were just tied up with that deer, trying to get that taken
Yeah.
care of and everything. And where we're at, it was hard to find someone to process it and put it in the cooler. And we're worried about the antlers and all that kind of stuff. So that ate away at a little bit. And then, but we got on the Bucks again. And honestly, if I would have stayed probably 2 more days, I think I could have got it done. But I had been working so much and I've been away from home. And I was just thinking, as far as return on investment goes, like, yeah, I could probably stay and kill a buck, but I could probably go home and spend some time with the family and just kind of like rebuild that account there,
Yep.
because I know there's going to be more withdrawals later on in the season.
Yep.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
I decided to pull out early, to the dismay of my partner. He was just like, "We're gonna kill. Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I know, but I got to get home and invest in the family." So we left, uh, went to Illinois mid-October, capitalized on a good buck there, and then hunted Indiana and just got my butt kicked. So I had tag soup in Nebraska, Indiana. I buy a tag in Michigan. I rarely hunt it, and I think I sat twice here and or no, 3 times. I was in the box and I messed up on a good 130 that I went after. I mean, busted me at 20 yards. Came in behind me and I, like an idiot, was just kind of too relaxed and spun around a little too fast and he caught me. But so I had a, same thing as you. It's like good year, but at the same time, like, I wanted it to go better. So I get
Yep.
that. Yep.
Yeah. So Indiana, that's a fun state. Did you hunt hill country?
No, I wish. Uh,
Oh yeah.
we were in Northwestern and
Okay.
what we've, because it lays out like ag country farm
Mhm, mhm.
and I'm getting into the hills the last couple years. Not like huge hills. I wouldn't call like Wisconsin hills, but like, maybe 100 foot, 75 foot hills,
Sure.
Um,
Mhm.
in Indiana though, where we're at, there is 20-foot wide trails mowed throughout the whole property. And so getting away from anybody is very difficult
Yeah.
and really chops up the pieces where you're finding pockets of deer. And if you're not in a pocket, then you're not in the deer at all.
Mhm.
Um, and there's 250 guys there. Now the mistake on this one was we went during the first week of the rut, first week of November, and so everybody has that day off, the week off, and they're all there. We started off on the weekend. There literally was 250 guys signed in at every piece that we went to.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a little insane, but I kept
Mm,
going back, and I didn't fare much better. I just couldn't figure out these
mm.
pieces, but yeah, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Pretty tough. Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I think 4 years now I've been hunting Indiana.
Okay.
If I would have been able to put my tag on that one of those 2 bucks last year or get permission from that landowner, it had been 3 out of 4 years I've been able to fill that tag with a mature deer. I shot my personal best 2 years ago, and that one too was on the hunting beast. And man, it was a couple miles in, and of course you have to pack these things out, and these hills are just. I mean, I don't, I can make my way up a hill, but then when you have 100-pound pack on your back, getting down that hill is a whole different game. But man, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
Just, I was super lucky. Josh Toker, I stayed by him, and he just kind of took me under his wing, and then with whatever I could learn from everything else, and a lot of scouting. I just love hill country now, man. That's just my favorite.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. It's starting to grow on me. I look for it now. Yeah.
yeah. Illinois, I found some hill country stuff. That's where I shot my buck, and
Okay.
man, uh, I got in there and just that one I think it was a mile and a quarter, mile and a half back, and I was alone on that hunt, so of course I had to pack everything out myself. Took me the whole rest of the day, but it was definitely well worth it. A lot of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I was a mile back easy. And yeah, I actually had people come down. They drove 5 hours to help me get my buck out. And
nice.
it took us
Yeah,
4 hours to get them out still. So
yeah, yeah.
it was tough, but it was well worth it. Well worth it.
Yeah, yeah, I was staying by my buddy Brian there, and he was in the tree stand in a different area. And at first I'm like, "Hey, I got one down," and he's like, "Well, do you want me to come help?" And at first I was like, "Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to have somebody like, give me a hand." And then I don't know, about half hour later, I messaged him back, and I'm like, "Dude, don't you dare leave that spot. Like,
Mm,
this is you only get like a week off a year. You hunt." And man, he didn't score that day, but a few days later, he got a real nice 150 plus buck
yeah.
out of that area. So it was like, yeah, yeah, it was great. Yeah,
Yeah. We had Brian on here and we were talking about that. And he's actually I think next week, he's gonna help me scout a piece down in Illinois. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Tell him, hey, stay out of my spots, man. No, just kidding. No,
I'm making him drive pretty far actually. He's a nice
yeah.
guy.
Oh,
So
I probably was, I think I was an hour and 15 minutes from his house in
okay.
that piece. So I
Yep.
bounced around a couple different pieces
Hmm.
until I found what I liked. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a hoot.
it is.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna like it there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I this will be my third year hunting Illinois. So
Oh, okay,
yep.
okay.
I've been successful both years. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this will be a new piece because my piece after last year got blown up. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So looking for something new. But
Yep.
um so we were talking earlier and what I don't know, I think it was your idea actually. We were talking about this kind of the different phases of a hunter.
Yep.
And we were kind of talking about what is this particular podcast, the Mobile Hunters Dojo, what does it seek to do? And I think it's to meet hunters on all different levels. Um and part of it's a little bit of a dance because we definitely have people who have high level skill who tune into this and are here for some of that higher level tactical type of conversation. But I think in general, we there's a lot of people in our hunting community who are still seeking to, get that first, wall mount buck or maybe find some consistency. Maybe they've gotten a few throughout the years, but they've lacked consistency. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I felt like there was a lot of high level conversation out there, which I love. I mean,
Mhm. Yep.
um, and I definitely want to talk about that when it's appropriate. But I wanted to present something to people who could. I don't know. I always felt like I would get discouraged when a lot of the conversations circled around booners or 200 inchers, because I was like, that just isn't my reality yet, and it might be a goal for me, but it's not where I am. And so after talking to you about that, like you started talking about this idea of the phases of hunters or of hunting. So
Yep.
I'd like to dive into that a little bit and kind of pick your brain on that.
Absolutely. So, I'll go back to my first year of hunting. So, my dad was a big meat hunter, and if it was brown, it was down, and to him, everything was a trophy. He shot like maybe 2 bucks in his life on all the years, and he only really gun hunted a very short time bow on it. I take that 3 bucks he shot in his whole life. But he was definitely a meat hunter. So when the first year, now we're going back to 1985. Yeah, I'm old.
So
Um,
am I, so it's okay.
yeah, yeah. I had a 20 gauge single shot shotgun shooting slugs out of, and he takes me out, and we had is in Wisconsin here. We had like 3 feet of snow that year. It was a real rough winter. Takes me out, and I froze my butt off, and man, it just was no fun. It was so cold, my thermos even froze shut. I couldn't get the cover off. The only deer I saw was two does running full tilt across this field on the way back to our pop-up camper that we were staying in. Uh, I thought to myself, "Is this is fun? Like this is this is not much fun." But my dad wasn't. He just would find a spot that seemed like it was deery, and
Mm-hmm.
then he'd sit there and hope for the best. And he didn't sit very long. He couldn't sit. He was he liked to walk around and then shoot him on the run. He was a great shot, one of the best shooters I've ever met or that I've ever seen. But it started off that way, and so it was a real rough start. But I, being young and excited and full of piss of vinegar, I went to our library at my middle school and I found these deer and deer hunting magazines, and it was
Mm-hmm.
fabulous because they had every year for like 10 years, and I started reading them from cover to cover on deer hunting. And man, when I was supposed to be doing schoolwork, I was reading deer and deer hunting. The teacher would see me open up that magazine. They knew I was off in another world, but that's just who I was. I just loved the outdoors. Of course, my dad was good at fishing, but when it came to hunting, it was pretty rough hunting with him. So hunted a couple years with him, and then finally we went. My dad would follow the doe tags. See, back then when I first started hunting, it was they had what's called a group doe
Yeah.
permit, where one person in the deer group got the permit. Then they started coming out with choice tags, and my dad would follow wherever the county had the most doe permits is where we were going. We never stepped foot in there, but that's where we're going because there has to be a lot of deer there. So we ended up one year in take that back, in the Nicolay National Forest, which is tough. Um, and at that time, I believe I was 15 or 16, something like that. But there was another friend of mine that I could walk in way back in, and we walked one day, me and my friend, and which he's only a couple years older than me, and we probably walked a mile and a quarter in. I found this island in this swamp, and man, was there the deer sign there. Of course, reading from deer and deer hunting, rubs. I didn't even know what scrapes were back then, but I knew if there was a lot of rubs, there had to be bucks in the area. So me and him went in there the next morning in the dark with, my dad's permission, of course, but he wasn't happy about it. But he knew I wasn't going to stick with him, and we got in there in the dark, and just as it's getting late out, I mean, it's snowing. I find this log. I sit down on this log. It's just getting light out. I go to put my mittens on because there really wasn't very good gloves back then. And I realized I had dropped one, and I kind of looked on my back trail to see where my mitten go. And I look up, and there's a 6 pointer sneaking through. He was only like 50 yards away. By then I had a 30-30 that I bought just like my dad,
Yeah.
and I let him have it. I dropped them right there, and I'm like screaming and like yelling like yeah. And my buddy who was on the other side of the island's like, "What is going on over there?" He heard the shot and everything, and yeah, this is the first
Oh, that's
little
awesome.
year and a half old, broken up 6 pointer. You see, it's varnished. This is all little my dad knew about bucks. He told me I had to varnish it or the horns will rot. And that was the start. I was in 1989. That was my first buck, and from there it blew up. Like, of course, I grabbed the bow. I had an old Browning Nomad bow with wooden limbs. I used that thing so many times that my limbs finally cracked, and then I had to upgrade it. But here I am. I was 15 years old, bow hunting, didn't know what I was doing. But man, that started everything. So from that point on, I was out there for anything. Anything, if it was a doe, a fawn, if it was a buck, I just wanted to kill. And that just seems to be the first step
Mm-hmm.
in the process of becoming a deer hunter is just getting some kills under your belt. And I'd shoot a fawn, and it was to me a huge deal. I back then it kind of was a big deal. There wasn't that many deer around. But yeah, with the bull, and that bull was so slow, man, you could just see the arrow flying because so slow. But yeah, so that's how I started off,
Yep.
and started off by shooting any legal buck I could with the gun or the bull. And once I don't know, I think it was probably about 10 years of that. It was probably about my mid 20s when I started going for better bucks.
Hmm.
Anything bigger than like a four corn, so 6 pointer or better.
Yep.
Um, uh,
Gary, one second. I've got this is the joys of recording down in the basement. I got some weird alarm going off here. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but
oh
just
yeah, yeah,
give me 1 second. Let me see
sure,
find
yeah,
out
no
what
problem,
this
man.
is. I'll edit that out.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I brought in a battery charger. So I'm going scouting this weekend, and I bring this portable battery charger with me. For whatever reason, it's telling me that it's dead, and it was just going off. I'm like, what? I didn't
Yeah,
know if it was me or you because I got these on. So I'm like, is
yeah,
that?
I could hear it after you said something.
Yeah. So I'll be able to edit all that out. But anyway,
Okay,
so
yeah, no problem.
jumping back in, um, that first stage, can I kind of hit on that a little bit?
Absolutely.
So that stage of just getting deer underneath your belt, you're the second or third person that I've talked to who I would consider, an absolute killer, who is an elite um, craftsman at this game, and that has been kind of like the number one piece of advice that they've said is that you really have to get some kills underneath your belt. I wish I would have done that, and it took me a long time. I've been hunting now for, geez, I don't know, about 20, 22 years. I came in late in the game, but I came in the era of the mega bucks, Real Tree Outdoors and stuff like that, and kind of jewelry was
Yep.
really getting popular. So the idea of shooting, a smaller buck, or even does for that that much, um, and the culture that I was raised in around hunting, the guys who hunted, who taught me how to hunt, it was like does are for guys who don't know how to hunt. We're out here killing bucks. So I didn't kill. I passed on a lot of deer, and I didn't kill a lot of deer, and it hurt me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started, killing more deer and realizing the importance of it did things start to open up for me. So I definitely agree with you that that first stage is just getting your feet wet and taking down some deer.
Yeah, I kind of a while back I read an article, and they call that the shooting stage where you just want to kill everything. And I kind of feel as though everybody should really go through that because you want to make mistakes, you make mistakes on the smaller bucks and those does and learn from that. So when you get a mature buck in front of you, you know how to react or you know what when to pull back or when to move, when you can't move.
Yeah.
That's where I learned a lot is from those times. And man, the excitement, I still get excited to shoot a doe. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I only shot one doe last year, and it's only because it's my fault. I chose to hold off. I kind of, as I get older here, those does with the young fawns in September, I just kind of, I got a heart. I, I used to be heartless, but now I have a heart. And so I did put one dough in the freezer, and I still get excited about it, man. It honestly feels good after, when you're mature buck hunting, a lot of times you don't even see anything because you're hunting completely different. And to be able to just take a doe and get that aggression out really does help. But yeah, yeah, I was lucky too. I grew up in an era where they didn't look down on you for shooting small bucks or does. That
Hmm.
makes all the difference. Like you shot a deer, everybody was high fiving each other, and back then you had to register them at registration stations, and most of them were bars or gas stations. Boy, people would come up and congratulate you because it was kind of a big deal. It's things are different now,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was the first stage I went through. I saved all my racks and put them on plaques just because I've been proud of them, and every one of them had a story. I didn't throw them in a box. I I have them all on the wall in my basement, but they are on the wall, and I remember every one of them. So it's kind of cool that way. But as I got older, I started I started a is like a different phase where, well, not only do I want to get a deer, but I want to get a lot of deer. Like I want to fill my doe tags, I want to fill my buck tags with the gun and the bow. And man, there was a couple times I shot two deer with one shot. Um, so I was all about killing. Like if I'd see a doe and two young ones, I was taking them all out. It
Yeah.
didn't matter. I was the most I shot one day was 5 deer, and looking back now, yeah, it was part of my growing up, but those times were in the 90s where the deer population was just crazy
Hmm.
nuts, and I tell you what, though, not an ounce of that meat went to waste either. I
Hmm.
I when I graduated from high school, I actually became a butcher and a taxidermist. I had my own taxidermy, worked for another taxidermist, and worked for three butcher meat facilities butchering. Plus, I did butchering on the side for cash. And so, I mean, for me, it was just natural to shoot as many deer as I possibly could. Well, as I got older, I got into trapping. And it started off with just being able to get my son out because in Wisconsin, they couldn't hunt until they're 12 years old. That's since changed, but he could go trapping at any age as long as he had trapper safety classes, or trapper education classes. I was kind of grandfathered in because I trapped in Alaska, but I took the classes with him, and it was supposed to be for him. Well, it turned out I loved it so much that I was doing all the. I really got big. I ran 300 traps, and it was enough that I could pay for my kids' Christmases and then be able to take my wife to Mexico every year, so she wasn't too against it. But that really put a kibosh onto my bow hunting during the rut.
Hmm.
One week, I would take off, pull all my traps, and then head up north for a week of bow hunting during the rut. And my deal was I wanted 8 pointer or better, and then a doe for the freezer. So it started changing at that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now my time was limited. Um, so I trapped for about 10 years, and that brings me up to about 8, 9 years ago. And that was another phase where I decided to sell all the traps and then dedicate my time and energy chasing bigger bucks. Now, at the time, bigger bucks meant bigger bucks.
Hmm.
The first like 3 years of that, I spent just looking for respectable bucks. And I shot a couple respectable bucks. But then one day, a friend of mine says, "Hey, you ever hear a guy named Dan Infalt?" I'm like, "Who?" About 7-ish years ago. And he's like, "Yeah, Dan Infalt." And I'm like, "Nope, never heard of him." So he sent me a link and I started watching his stuff and man, I was like, wow, this guy knows his stuff. So then of course the hunting public and was just starting up then
Hmm.
and met all those guys. Uh, and from there, I started my goals changed. My goals now were for mature bucks. And to get mature bucks, you got to pass those 2.5 year olds and 3.5 year olds. Um, and that's tough. That's
Yeah.
tough, man. I mean, all these years I've been after respectable bucks, and now those things you got to pass to get to those really good bucks. And it was hard. It really was. But I went to one of Dan's uh, programs where he takes you out in the swamp and he teaches you everything and why he hunts the way he does. And man, that was a game changer, man. I was like 50 yards out of the game, but I might as well have been a mile out of the game. Um, once I once I had that information under me, it was it was all it was crazy after that. And then I started putting down some really good bucks. I mean, I was there, but I just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I definitely feel that what I went through now, it's not even as much as how many inches of bone is on top of the head. It's more I want mature bucks is what I
Hmm.
really want. And the adventure. The adventure for me is everything. Like that buck I shot in Illinois last year, he wasn't giant by any means. He's not going to be a 150 or any. But you know what? Never setting foot in there before, never have any trail cam info, never, and being able to go somewhere where you've never been and be able to put down a mature buck to me is awesome.
Yeah.
So, um, and now I'm at that point where that's the adventures, the hanging out with my buddies and watching them be successful too, and videotaping has been a real big part of me the last couple of years because I want to share the information that I learned. I want other people to learn and have that success like I do.
Yeah.
So I'm just a normal guy. If I can do it, anybody can.
Well,
So
that's what I like about you is you are a normal down to earth guy who went through some phases. And I kind of talked about this on a podcast I did recently with the Lone Wolf Custom Gear crew. Is I asked him, I said, "Who here?" There was three of them, and I asked, "Who here is a natural born killer?" And I expected someone to raise their hand because I do think some people are born with this innate ability to just get out there and kill and do well. I know a few people like that, but everybody in that group didn't. Nobody rose their hand. It stayed down, and um, it they talked about these different phases of that they went through,
mhm,
and that's what I'm so interested in this conversation is because I think sometimes when you're not killing big bucks, you wonder like, okay, are they just natural born killers? Did they just did Dan automatically know how to kill big bucks his whole life? Did Gary know how to kill big bucks his whole life? And I at least assumed that guys like you did.
yeah.
And
Oh,
and then I've started to I've do the podcast and honestly just because a lot of this is what I love about our community is a lot of these people with a lot of wisdom um are willing to share um
mhm.
their information. Um, sorry, my wife was she was coming down here. So no. Um, so and which is so nice because you can reach out to guys on Instagram or Facebook and get a lot of feedback and there's a lot to learn from now. So
Well,
so
I guess I should probably mention too. I'm pretty lucky because Andre's from where they built Lone Wolf
mhm.
stands. It's my hometown here.
Oh
They
wow.
built them right down the road from my house. So um, I was able to get some stands that were from the company for
Yeah.
fairly cheap because I had friends, you know.
Yeah.
And I was able to talk to Andre a few times in the past too. So I mean, The thing of it is if you really want to become a killer, you need to network. You need to listen to
Yes.
everybody. I mean, the lone wolf, the hunting beast, the hunting public,
Hmm.
all these people who are successful have all different ways of doing it. You just need to find what works for you.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, if it wasn't for the fact I started off with those lone wolf stands being portable around here, I don't know where I'd be. I had a homemade stand. I'd probably be at 6 foot underground if I still kept using it. But yeah, so I mean, I think a huge thing about being successful is networking and learning from different people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to throw that in there because it's there's been a whole plethora of people who I've listened to. I'm always still listening, um, but there's always little things I can pick up or remind myself. Oh yeah, we you need to start paying attention to this a little more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's where I'm at. I'm just, collecting as much information as I possibly can and seeing how I can apply it to my situation. And,
yep,
it's an awesome journey. And I'm with you. I like the adventure. I'll actually sacrifice probably some of my success for the adventure.
yep,
It's not it's very rare for me to go to the same spot twice just because I like
mhm,
traveling. I like, seeing different parts of the country and hunting deer in different places and um but I also do, like get on to more mature bucks as well. So
right, right,
look at these phases. Now with you, you had the trapping phase. And I would imagine I've heard on different podcasts with other people who trapped, and they talked about how that really elevated their game, their whitetail game, because of the attention to detail and just, understanding animal movement and stuff like that. But for the guy who doesn't get to go down that road, they start off kind of, I think we all do eventually, like babies out in the woods. We don't know what
yep,
we're doing. A lot of us were taught, I think, that more traditional brown it's down.
mhm,
Just because for our parents and our grandparents, I think a lot of that had to do with just cost savings. Like I can go feed the whole family by kicking down a couple does.
yep,
And then the idea of killing, bucks to put on the wall, I think is relatively newer over the last, 30, 40 years. I don't know, man. Could be longer than that now. I keep forgetting on what, that is 2024,
right,
um,
right,
but so the next phase is then killing. So we go out like babies. We're kind of just stumbling. We're learning from somebody. And then the idea is to kill as much as we can just so we can get used to killing. And
yep,
then the next phase I wrote down here was the respectable buck phase. That
yep,
that and so I'll put a number on it because I think right now guys are so number focused. One thing I like about you and in a private conversation, you said, look, I don't even measure my deer. Like
yeah,
I measure for other people because they want to know, but I don't do that.
yep,
And I think that's awesome. If we all can do that, it's a lot more healthier, like I think enjoyable process for us.
right,
But, when I talk to guys who are going, hey, I'm trying to get to that next level, a lot of times that next level for them is probably a 2.5, 3.5 year old buck. I'll say 110 inches all the way up to 130-inch buck.
sure.
What is, what in your opinion, do people need to do to move from that? Like, I'm just killing brownets down, I'm getting that underneath my belt to getting to that stage. Can you think of like the dividing factor?
Yep. So when it's brown, it's down. You're basically looking for really good used trails, maybe even just pinch points, which usually are good trails going down, and you're hoping for the best. Okay. So when you want to go into that next phase, now you need to start reading sign. Now you're just not looking for that well-worn trail. You're looking for rubs, and learning how to tell what age class more likely is making that rub, and you're looking for bedding areas, and you're looking for scrapes. Those are your three main things that you can want. So if you pay attention to those, learn how to read those signs, uh, especially with bedding areas. Man, that is people don't put enough into it. I know Dan Infeld's really big into bedding, But let's face it, man. Brian, he's into betting. Um, Betting is the key because that's where you're going to find the majority of your daytime movement is around those bedding areas. So if you can find where there's a good scrape right outside of a bedding area with some decent rubs, and you put your time in, and you try to, with the wind and stuff, try to kind of watch your scent. You should be able to get a shot eventually on a 2.5 year old, and get one down. That's kind of where I am with if you want to shoot a 2.5 year old.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
So with that, so I'm doing a right, it'll probably drop pretty close to when this one drops. It's a monthly series called Do This Now. And so uh, it's meant to help individuals who haven't gotten that buck on the wall yet. And to, I'm assuming part of the reason why they haven't gotten that buck on the wall yet is because they haven't made whitetails kind of like a 12-month process or 365.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to give them something each month to do. Right now, it's scouting. And I would love your honest opinion on this. So if you disagree with it, please don't hold
Sure.
back.
Yep. No problem.
One of the things I'm saying right now for the month of March is for them to go out and put boots on the ground, do some postseason scouting. I've encouraged them not to focus on buck betting early season. I've encouraged them to focus on doe betting and some of the rut locations because that I feel like is their best odds of being able to get on to a, 2.5, 3.5 year old buck.
Hmm.
Um, and I started to kind of second guess myself a little bit after saying that, but I don't know. What do you think about that advice to someone who, and I'm also thinking of people who might not have as much time to hunt as
Right.
as
The
we do.
weekend warrior. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
I totally agree with that. If you're looking for a 2.5 year old, 100%. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find those areas, those bedding areas that hold does, and find where those rubs, you'll find rubs all around that doe bedding area. And that's where you need to set up
Hmm.
during rut for a 2.5 year old, or maybe even get a 3.5 year old. But I absolutely agree with that. Now, the one thing that you might want to mention though is that don't so you find bedding areas right now, at least in our area in Wisconsin, don't think that that is 100% guarantee for bedding areas during the season. By us right now, the deer are not in those cattail swamps at all. Like,
Hmm.
I just was out last weekend, and man, I could almost not even buy a, a deer track. And I know darn well that they're in there thicker than thieves for early season and rut because I hunted it. Uh, but during the wintertime like this, there's not a lot of cover for them, so they're not going to be in there. Now I could tell what beds were what by seeing the cattails matted down or whatever. I can, because I, done enough of it. But for the person who's looking for a 2.5, 3.5 year old, they probably don't have the experience
Hmm.
enough to see that. So what you want to do is, like you said, exactly what you said is find a bedding area and find all those rubs around it. There would probably be a ton of rubs around it if it's a 2.5 year old. And if you could find a scrape right next to that bedding, man, that is the ticket right there. That's going to be the winner.
Hmm.
You should almost, if you played your cards right, it- I don't want to say a guarantee, but man, your odds are for a 2.5 year old ah, or older. That's going to be for sure
Yeah.
your ticket. You get over that scrape. So.
Yeah, I've killed a ton of 120s with that technique right there. It's so simple. I'm almost embarrassed to say it.
But it also depends on the area you're in. So here in my area of Wisconsin, it is a tough, tough area to hunt.
Mhm.
And a 120 class is going to be a lot more difficult than what a guy thinks. If you go to say Illinois or Indiana or some of the other states I've been in, this particular area is a lot tougher. I know Dan Info does not like this area either. So if that tells you anything, but it's still for a 2.5-year-old, anywhere, that's definitely going to be your
Yeah.
ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, I should preface. I mean, I'm in Michigan, and I think a 120-inch buck here in Michigan is probably a pretty special buck as well. I mean, we definitely have, I mean, I've run enough cameras to know that there's big ones all over the
You're a
place.
troll though, right?
What was that? Yeah, oh
You're
yeah. Yeah.
troll, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're in Lower Michigan,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
And
Now up in the UP, that would be
oh
big.
yeah. Yeah. Um, but I would, yeah, I did. I cheated. I went out of state. I stopped hunting Michigan in 2008, and I've been in Nebraska and Illinois and
Mhm.
Indiana and all the North Dakota, all those places. And so that was kind of my secret to success for a long time.
Yeah,
And so sitting downwind of a scrape outside of bedding area that had rubs, and if I sat there long enough, I was going to get a
yeah.
shot. And so let's talk a little bit, still staying in this you know this phase, this, I guess, the second phase of a hunter, with the decent bucks,
Mhm.
respectable bucks, we called it. Is there a camera game that's involved here? Now, I'm not talking about our level, because I especially yours. I mean, how many cameras do you run typically in a year? This is
I
the
am
elite
the guy
level.
that runs 100 trail cams,
Yeah.
and so I'm really good with the trail cam deal. Typically, if you're looking for that 2.5-year-old, why we concentrate on two things. One is once you find that bedding area and your trails coming out of it, putting a camera on those trails, that'll give you some intel to help you out. And secondly, that magical scrape, man, I'm telling you, I love scrapes.
Yeah.
Definitely most of my stuff is on scrapes, but there is times where it's just not feasible.
Yep.
It's too many people know about the scrape, so you need to get off the scrape and get
Hmm.
the info you need.
And is there a difference between scrapes that you want to focus on? I mean, visually, can you tell a difference between?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's the more advanced level.
Yep. Okay.
You can definitely tell the licking branches are a lot thicker, heavier, like they've been used more. Uh, the one thing that I will say is not all of them are car hood size
Hmm.
scrapes. That doesn't necessarily mean much to me,
Hmm.
because I do have licking branches in standing water that get big bucks, but there's nothing scraped underneath
Hmm.
it. And it takes a lot to be able to recognize those kind of spots. Then you put a camera on it and you realize, holy cow,
Yeah.
I've been walking past this licking branch for how many years? But I also have it too, especially in high pressure areas where some of the smaller scrapes, that are maybe a 5-gallon bucket size, will can
Yeah.
hold really mature bucks. But so that's a more advanced
Hmm.
um, type hunting. But yeah, it definitely is. Troy Pottinger does a really good job of talking about scrapes, and he's like the master. I learned a lot listening to his podcast too, and then some of the things, like I said, though, you have to learn on your own. Like he does more like mountainous terrain, while I have a lot of swamps, so I had to kind of make it work for what I'm hunting. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So would it be safe to say, for a guy who's still going for that level, that 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck, that maybe just get three cell cams? The reason why I'm saying cell cams is I think the temptation, at least I know for me early on,
Hmm.
is to get in there and check that camera probably too much, and I start to blow up the spot.
Yeah.
Every time you go in, it's like you're hunting, because you're
Yep.
leaving your scent. So maybe get like three cell cams and set them up in three different
Either
bedding
one or
areas.
two.
Yeah.
Even one or two will give you so much information. But
Mhm.
here's the thing, another advanced thing, that they should implement is hanging them high and
Yes.
pointing them down, because I see it too much around here where people put it eye level with a deer, and the deer comes walking up and has that flash in their face. That's game over, man.
Mhm.
They'll avoid that area, and you just even a 2.5-year-old won't like it.
Yep.
So I hang them up high, and matter of fact, now, last year I came across Brian's product with the Good Sit,
Yeah.
camera holders. Game changer for me.
Yeah.
I have almost all my cameras run that now.
Yep.
So, but if you could get that camera up high pointing down at either A trail, or B, a scrape by bedding area, you're gonna learn a lot what's in that area and learn when they're coming through. And man, that is probably the quickest way to learn that area.
Okay. Great.
Yep.
So now, I mean, is there anything else we want to say for the 2.5-year-old buck?
Yeah, don't I have, friends that are weekend warriors, and it is tough for them, and don't let people judge you if you shoot a 1.5 or 2.5-year-old.
Mhm.
Don't buck shame, man. You be proud of what you got, because I tell you what, there's a guy out there who would die to shoot a buck that's 2.5 years old, especially on public property where it's really tough.
Yeah.
So don't act, don't be, don't shy away and say, I know this is a small buck, but this is what I shot. No, be proud of what you shot. I want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Like, every one of mine are trophies as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, you can't see it here, but I have my first buck right above these horns. And yeah, I mean, it's just this little 7 point, and I love it. It's one of my favorite bucks of all time, and I've
Yep.
got so many good memories with it. So the other thing too is also, just kind of don't, I mean, set your expectations accordingly too. Don't get too worried about being super successful or getting the biggest buck, or even if your goal this year was a 2.5 and you don't get it this year, don't look at that
Mhm,
as a failure. It's just part of the process. If you keep working this, you will achieve it. Like, you will achieve it
mhm. Oh, yeah, for
if you
sure.
keep pushing. Yep.
Yep, and learn. Every
Yep.
time you go out or you look at your cameras, your trail cam pictures, think of why he's there, and what you can learn from everything. Don't just say, "Oh, well, he didn't come through today." Well, why not? Which way is the wind blowing, or what time of year is it, or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Really good. So moving on to that next one, which is kind of that starting to get into that more elite level maturity buck. And again, that's relative to where you live.
Yep. Yep.
Honestly, I think a 3.5-year old in Michigan, 4.5-year old in Michigan is a pretty wily coyote. I mean, it's a smart
Yeah.
buck, and I think
Yep.
Wisconsin, there's areas like
Yeah.
that. PA has
Yep.
areas like that. So I mean, we're not saying that, everyone needs to move into this phase and start going for 6.5-year olds or 5.5-year-olds.
Right.
It's relative to your area. Make sure you understand that when you set those
Perfect.
goals.
They
Yep.
have to be there in order for you to kill them.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm,
And you might
mhm.
have to go somewhere else if you really, if your
Yep.
area doesn't hold them,
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So that next step, I definitely say, is when you start, um, you're you're actually looking for those more mature buck bedding areas, which will bed differently than your does and your young bucks. And then you probably will be running more trail cams, I would assume. I know I did.
Mhm.
I run more than I ever have, but I also hunt a lot of different states. Um, and you start passing on those 2.5-year olds. That's the biggest thing. You can't shoot a 3.5 or 4.5-year old if you shoot a 2.5-year old.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that let it go to shoot it next year. I'm saying if you shoot a 2.5-year-old, your tag is full. Now you can't
Yeah.
shoot a 3.5-year-old. So that is one of the hardest things to get over going to that next level.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you agree
Oh,
with that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm kind of in that in between right now. Like
Mhm.
I've killed a plenty of 120 inch bucks. You know, I've killed a few in the 130. I had a freak thing happen this year, which moved me to the other end. And I'm in the middle now trying to fill in that, like so
Mhm.
for me this year, and I'm going off of I'm talking inches, but
Right.
um, I'm probably, around 140 inch is what I'm holding out for. So,
Yep.
um, but all each time I moved up, I had to let
Mhm.
the other one go.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's scary, especially um, when you might just be a rut hunter, like I was for
Yeah.
so long. It's tough to think, man, I'm going to let this pass. I've got 10 days to get it done. That means I might eat my tag this year, you
Yep,
know?
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yep.
If you want to get to that next level, you can't be afraid of eating your tag.
Nope.
So shoot a doe.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
eat a deer, but
Yeah.
you have to have that mindset right off the bat and be strong with that mindset and say, "Hey, this is what my goal is. It's either all or nothing." Um, because then I've had it already where I was in that phase too, and then I shoot a I'll shoot a 2.5-year-old back then, and then it was great for that first, couple hours. I was the adrenaline's, and then all of a sudden you realize your season's over now, and you're going, "Why did I shoot that?" And
Hmm.
you're almost disappointed.
Yeah.
Um, and but you know, it's one of those things where you just have to have that mindset. I think you're your own worst enemy at that point
Hmm.
during that phase. So uh, the other thing is generally people put more time in too when they get to that phase too.
Yep.
Now you're looking at, like you said, year-round scouting
Hmm.
because let's face it, at least in this area, 3.5-year-olds don't live behind every tree.
Hmm.
Unless you go to Iowa, I heard they hit. No, just kidding. No, but seriously though, there's a lot less of those than there are the 2.5-year-olds. So not only are you going to war against a smarter buck, you're also going after one that there's less of.
Hmm.
So just be ready for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
And I like what you said. You said my goal. You were talking about like this has to be your goal. And I
yeah,
think at all the stages, it has to be your goal.
yep.
Like, don't move into another stage if it's not what you really want to do. And,
Mm-hmm.
and don't make what you're seeing out on social media or on TV influence your goal. It really needs to be a personal desire. Because I can tell you firsthand, when you do it because of what you see outwards and not
Mm-hmm.
what's inside, it'll make hunting miserable. Um,
Very miserable.
because losing is part of the game. You have to be okay with losing because it's your personal goal. If it's not your personal goal and you're losing because you're trying to do something you're really not fully into, it really does take the fun out of it. And so only do it if you want to. Set your goal.
Yep. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny. My wife's cousin, we call each other cousin-in-law. He's one of my closest friends. He hadn't shot a buck in like 18 years because he was just going after that giant buck. And then the last couple of years here, he started shooting some that weren't, 150-inch bucks. And he's saying to himself, man, that was awesome. Why did I wait so long? And I get it, but man, all those years that he could have been shooting some decent bucks, not giants, but decent, and then really enjoying himself more, is lost.
Yeah.
And now, well, with he goes with me to other states too, and going to other states now, man, that is. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's challenging, man. It's fun, but yeah. So you got to remember, it's always more fun to fill a tag. Let's face it. In the
Mhm.
end, who
Yeah.
doesn't want to fill a tag and be successful? But at the same time, if you don't meet your goals, don't be afraid to eat that tag.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I can't agree more with that. Now, one question, I'm wondering if you can give, it- the elite level that we're talking about, and not for the guys who are there, but
Mm-hmm.
can you give us a snapshot of what a year in the life of somebody who's chasing? I mean, you don't have to go into great
Oh,
detail,
I'm fine.
but just so people
It takes
understand what it's going to take.
yeah. For me, it's commitment. For my area here, it's uh, year-round scouting. In this area, I'll run 70 cameras easy, um, and it is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of boots on the ground, and we can spotlight here, and it takes all. Sometimes you're out all night trying to find that one buck that you can go after, and uh, yeah, running the trail cams, and it's for I'm a public land hunter though.
Yep.
People are different. Some people may have the private land, so they don't have to do all this, but that's what it takes for me in this area. Now I make trips to Indiana, probably I think 3 or 4 trips in spring and summer. And I'll put on about 10 miles a day in the
Hmm.
hills, which is a lot. And then I have probably, 20 cameras there running. Uh, and I'm constantly checking new areas, and uh, it's a lot. It really is. Now, some of the states it isn't feasible for me to go to scouting, so I have to e-scout. And then boots on the ground. As soon as I get there, I'm taking off. I'm looking. You want to go in, but you don't want to go too far in, and it's a hoot. It's a challenge. It's the best. It's just to go to another state that you've never set foot in and be able to shoot a mature buck to me is like that's the ultimate challenge.
Hmm.
The number, how big is it? Yeah, uh, that's to each their own. For me, the mature buck thing is that's the challenge. So,
Yeah.
um, you you at the elite level, I think some of the most important, the key things to really understand is your terrain. First of all, if you're hunting hill country, do you know hill country? Can you read a map? Do you that book that's behind you right there, Mapping Trophy Whitetails? That is probably one of the best pieces of information out there right now. And actually, that's what I learned on. Josh Toker's the one who told me about it. Or are you hunting swamps, which are different? Then you go to somebody like Dan Infield's videos and check that out. There's so much information out there. And then the next biggest thing is your thermals, learning how thermals and wind currents work in every area. I have it in certain areas that I hunt in hill country where the wind will blow differently with the leaves on versus not the leaves on.
Yeah.
The edges of fields with the leaves on, without the leaves on, will be different. So I pick so much milkweed, and I take little pill bottles, empty pill bottles, and fill them up, and I have them all over there, all over my truck. My backpacks are everywhere, just because if I don't have one with me, I'm naked.
Hmm.
Um, Literally learn how thermals work, or early season, mid season, late season, and take and throw as much milkweed out as you can and learn all that. What I generally do is when I find an area that I want, some people will pick the tree. I had this conversation with Brian just like last week. He was telling me about it, and Cody Hoon, they were scouting together. And I said, well, I don't just pick the tree. I said, "I'm kind of beyond that at this point. Unless there's only like one good tree in the area, I'll pick the area. And then as I make my way in, I'll be throwing milkweed out, watching what it does.
Hmm.
And a lot of times before I even pick that tree, I'll be standing there for 20 minutes, half hour, just dropping milkweed to see what it's doing. And that right there alone is up my odds so much. The buck I
Hmm.
shot in Illinois, that's what I had to do. I'm sitting there in the dark with just throwing milkweed out, and I had to be in a 10-foot area to be able to hunt where I needed to be. And yeah, there was two trees there. One had poison ivy on it, and which I was not going to go up. And the other one was really a tree that was pretty big around where my sticks could barely get around them, but it happened to be the perfect tree. So
Yep.
it's all the little things that matter. The other thing is your entry and your exit from your tree stand. Huge deal, huge. People don't realize it, but man, if a buck comes crosses your trail, he's out.
Yep.
He's gone. He knows the gig is up, and you'll never even see him, and you'll wonder why. Well, what the heck? He's been showing up 2 nights in a row, and now all of a sudden, yeah, it's because he probably came across your trail, and he's on to you. So,
Hmm. You know,
um,
there's so much to think about at that level,
yeah,
and you know, you have to enjoy continuous improvement. You've
yeah,
you've you've got to enjoy giving yourself critical feedback. I think it almost naturally that process of continuous improvement has to be, if you're talking about a born killer, I think that might be the piece of it that makes somebody who's going to get to that elite level or not. Because I believe
mhm,
if you work hard enough, you will achieve your goals. But to get to that level, you have to be that critical and you have to enjoy that process, almost more so than
mhm,
killing a deer. In fact,
yep,
I think for sure more so than killing a deer. It's
mhm,
about the
agree.
process at that level.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
You have to. You just have to in order to realize that you made those mistakes. You push in a little bit too close to a bedding area and you bump those bucks out, or you bump a satellite deer out and that pushes your target buck out, or you maybe there's a wind that just kind of crosses and then gets down on you, or some thermals. You have to learn I've had it, one of the biggest things with people that don't understand thermals, okay? I say to them, they say, "Well, how do you know if a deer smells you or not?" Because the wind was perfect for me. I said, "Oh, yeah? Have you ever had it where upwind from you, a deer blew at you and you didn't know why? And you just thought maybe a coyote or something ran by?" Yeah. I said, "That's your thermals."
Hmm.
I said, "The wind doesn't blow constantly. There's those lulls, and then your thermals will take your scent. And then I'll take them to the side of my garage with a west wind, and I'll be like, hey, so which way do you think your scent's blowing? Well, it's going to blow west." I said, "Watch this. I'll take a piece of milkweed out, and it'll suck down the side of my garage straight south, and then it'll lift up and then blow west." I'm like, "What just happened there?" "I don't know. I've never seen that before." I'm like, "This is why you need milkweed. You need to learn."
Yep.
And even if that guy who wants to shoot that 2.5-year-old, he could he could triple his chances by just you grabbing some milkweed fluff and keeping that on him and using that so to see which way your scent is blowing. I don't do much scent control, honestly.
I was gonna ask. I mean, yeah. I
I
mean,
used to. I used to be that guy that washed them. Matter of fact, I have a separate wash machine in my basement. But I used to wash everything in scent-free stuff and then hang it out on the clothesline to dry. And I use rubber gloves for it was ridiculous. And I'm sure it does help for going, when you're walking in and walking out. And maybe your scent isn't as strong, but man, I'm so dialed in that
mhm.
you just with that milkweed and knowing all your wind currents, just everything. to me, I just are beyond that. I have like probably 20 different camouflage outfits just so I have a fresh one for a trip.
Yeah.
I'm going to be selling all those now, but yeah, it's that's all part of. I mean, am I saying scent control can't be a good, isn't a good thing or whatever? No, I'm not saying that. I just say what I do.
Hmm. I think my listeners are probably getting sick of me saying this because I say it every podcast, but I feel like, and maybe it's just because I got tripped up in it. I was focused on all the wrong things. Like I,
Gimmicks.
I was fully committed to
Hmm.
this deer hunting thing,
Yep.
and I wanted to kill mature bucks, but my attention was all in the wrong places. It was shedding ounces. I got to get
Hmm.
lighter. I got to get lighter. I got to get lighter. It was scent control. I got to get my spray. I got to get the carbon,
Ozonics. And yeah.
all of it. Yeah, the carbon suits, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm focused all in on that stuff. And I'm focused in on my argument of why I need that stuff.
Hmm.
And I didn't take any time to learn deer. I didn't take any
Hmm.
time to learn the woods. I had no
Hmm.
woodsmanship. And eventually, the other thing I did too was I killed myself with knowledge, meaning I would listen to podcasts or watch videos or movies, read books, and just keep doing that without ever
Yeah.
going to the woods and actually throwing milkweed and sitting in the woods for a little while and just watching the woods,
Yep.
like
Yep.
I didn't do those things. So go out and do these things. Listen about thermals, but don't just say you listen to it and then go out and hunt. Go out
Hmm.
there and practice this stuff.
Hmm.
And that's where preseason all scouting throughout the year helps.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing I really need to mention for those people out there who are trying to advance their skills is don't fall in the trap of all the gimmicks.
Yeah.
I mean, find what works for you, your broadheads and your arrows and stuff like that. Find what works for you. You don't have to go out and buy the best of everything and think that's going to help you kill a deer. It's not.
Mm-mm,
um, get some comfortable camouflage, and even camouflage is not even
mm-mm.
I don't know, Dan Infeld's killing them in flannel shirts, I
Yeah.
mean, uh, but you also got to remember that he also knows when he can and can't move in a tree stand
Mhm,
too. So camouflage probably does help you, but is it a necessity? I would probably not
mhm,
say that I'm not going to say that, if you go and get a carbon suit, that's going to be the end of all. This is going to be the ticket right here. Don't get stuck in those gimmicks because all it is a crutch.
mhm,
It's a crutch to mentally think you did everything right to get your deer. It's not, but that's the wrong thing.
mhm.
If I had to do it all over again, and go back to when I was shooting those 2.5-year-olds and then say, all right, well, I want to shoot these mature bucks. I wouldn't, spend my time learning all the different oaks. There's
Yeah.
so many different oaks out there. It's crazy. All the different foods, stuff that people don't think of. Learn what is the bedding areas, learn how to read topography, maps, and all the important things that it takes to kill a buck, not buck bombs and
Mhm,
scent sprays and all that. None of that is needed.
mm-mm,
What you need to do is get on the deer's level and dumb it down and say, listen, well, these are red oaks, or these are white oaks, or these are black oaks, or these are whatever. The red dogwoods for late season. I mean, you learn all that. That if you would learn all that, that would be worth more than any other ozonics or any other crap that they sell out there. It's worth more. That knowledge is worth more than anything, and I think that's where people get hung up too. I see cans of buck bomb all over laying in the
yeah,
woods. I'm going, or how for a lot of places I hunt, you go out there, you start smacking around uh,
yeah,
black racks. And you know what? I could tell a mile away, hey, yeah, there's a hunter over there. There's
yep,
hitting those black rack every 15 minutes. Yeah, can it work at the right time, right place? Absolutely. But does also being quiet and being at the right place work too? Probably even better.
More. Yeah.
I've shot a deer already where two guys walked in and did a rattling sequence, and a buck was leaving that area to get away from them.
Yeah.
They come back through, and I got a buck laying on the ground, and they're like, how'd you do that? Yeah, you guys went in there and you started rattling all over the place, and this deer was heading the opposite direction where you came,
Yeah.
where you were. So, um, it's it's all about that. Just learning,
Hmm.
learning.
And you
That's
can do that
key.
for free. You can go to the
Free
library and get all that stuff.
library, YouTube, man. There was
Yeah.
no YouTube when I was
I
young.
know.
Like VHS tapes were, other than Dan Infeld and Andre and all the a few of the actual like elite guys who had a few videos out. It was nothing. Deer and deer hunting, and even then, it was pretty generic stuff. At least back when I was younger.
Yeah.
So
What I see now too is people trying to skip like the
yeah,
levels.
yeah.
You know, it's and I'm watching guys and if you're this guy, I'm only saying this because I care. It
Hmm.
doesn't bother me. I mean, do whatever you want to do, but
Right.
I think trying to skip the level and just thinking and like I'm gonna go and just kill big bucks right off from the get-go. There's so much you're gonna miss. You can listen to those techniques all day long, and I think they do help. But if you haven't gone through the levels of being the baby out in the woods, have no idea what's going on, killing a bunch of deer, getting that mid tier, deer underneath your belt. Honestly, you're not going to find the consistency. You might get lucky every once in a while
Right.
and shoot a big buck, but you're not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be long term. Take your time. You don't have to go from, just starting off to killing monsters right off the get go. Don't do that to yourself.
I know a couple of young guys that got into this mobile hunting, trophy buck type thing, whatever, and they hadn't shot anything, you know, anything under 120 inches at all. They just went straight for the top.
Hmm.
And then that big buck comes and they're telling me this, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just listening to them, and then all of a sudden they have like three different giant buck encounters and totally blow it.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I tried to explain to him, if you would have got a little bit more experience by shooting that 120-inch buck and knowing when to move, when to pull back, how to react, and how those bucks react. I mean, they seem like they have a sixth sense.
Ah.
You may have been able to pull those shots off, but because you just went from never shooting anything to now I want to shoot 150 class buck, and you're screwing them up or wounding them or whatever, it's a tough lesson to learn. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, how many of those do you screw up until you finally get one, So,
Hmm.
not to say that that's not the right way or the wrong way. It's just it's a different way, and I think you kind of hurt yourself
Yeah.
by something like that. Or the people who want to jump into straight up mature buck hunting and they're not seeing
Yeah.
deer, 'cause mature buck hunting is a whole different ball game. You don't see as many deer, and they just get frustrated, and then that's it. They quit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it. It's like looking at a chessboard and then trying to see all the moves you can, um, but at one move at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
What I find so difficult about talking about mature buck hunting is that it's so situational. And like
mhm,
so it's so hard to really bring out some details of what exactly to do and how to get into that next phase. And that's why I think the other phases are so important because you
yeah,
kind of just start to learn it while you're out there. But I would love one day to do a podcast on techniques to go after mature bucks, but you almost have to pull out stories. Then you have to really
right.
talk about it because
You do
each buck is
experiences.
so different. Yeah,
Yep, the ones you got and the ones you didn't get.
yeah, Yeah.
because, for every one that you got, there's probably 3 other ones you didn't get, and it can be frustrating. You see this, that's
I got
yeah,
none there.
see? 'Cause you shot that giant this year.
Yeah. Took it all. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
So
another thing too that I really wanna mention, we touched base on this a little bit, is when you are going to the more advanced levels, I feel that out of state hunts is such a huge deal. If you are really into it that much and go to out of state hunts because my friend Cody Hoon, he lives in Iowa. That guy gets on these big bucks. He just can't get the job done. This guy he's there. He's there. He just has uh actually put the right shot on him. And he this year he's committed himself to spending some money and then going to out of state hunts. And him and I talked about this, and I said, listen, man, you live in Iowa where you got all these bucks. Now you're going to go to other states where, instead of having 3, 4 mature bucks in there, you're going to have one. So now you really, really, really are looking for those small details of what that buck is doing, and you're after that one particular buck instead of maybe one of the three comes out in Iowa.
mhm.
That'll make you a better hunter in your
Yeah.
state. I feel that me going to now I've only started doing out of state hunts 4 years ago. Me going to other states and hunting these other areas made me a better hunter at home. Also
Yeah.
made me realize that this area sucks.
That happened to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I went
So
to Illinois and the sign was unbelievable,
yeah,
and then I came back gun ho to Michigan and started scouting around here and just was so disappointed.
yeah.
It doesn't look the same.
But and I talked about this with Cody and Brian. I said, listen, man, part of me says, yeah, I kind of got screwed. I live in this part of Wisconsin, and this is it's hard, it's tough. Um, but in the end, I feel it made me a better hunter because I go to other states and I do very well. Maybe a lot of it's luck, I don't know, but I kind of feel that it made me more dialed in,
Mhm.
and which makes me more successful in the end. So uh, you kind of can look at it in a bunch of different ways.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I believe both of those can be true.
yeah,
Um, so for me, I think what I taken away from out of state hunting is that um I've learned so many different terrains,
yeah,
because depending on what state I go to, I mean, Nebraska, where I hunt in Nebraska, I hunt down in the southern portion, really close to Kansas. So, you know, big open CRP fields with little fingers, going through there. And, it feels strange the first time you sit up in one of those trees and you're just in this little finger of, a creek bottom,
you're
you're
like
like,
nothing this year. What
is
the
this
heck?
yeah, yeah, and then when it works, you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is
Yeah,
amazing."
they
It
stand up out of their bed, and you're like, he was there the whole time.
Yeah,
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 and then going to the hills, and hunting hills, and then, hunting, swampland, and just we're and you're forced to have to do it because you've invested the time and the money and
mhm,
you're there.
mhm, yeah,
And there's a sense of I think the unknown, like
yeah.
I thought this would go away, but I remember my first road trip was Nebraska, by the way, and it was 2008, so a long time ago. And I remember hitting Nebraska, and the moment we hit Nebraska, I was like, "We're in Big Buck Central, man! Like, it's gonna be around." And so every time you went
Yeah,
out, you had this anticipation, and I would say that anticipation, learning to anticipate killing a good buck, I think that also is a next level type of thing.
oh, yeah, that gives you more drive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
now
for
when I
sure.
hunt, now where I hunt, wherever I go, I've actually had that anticipation.
Yep. Yep.
at this stage. And but anyway, so I learned all this, and then all of a sudden the weird thing is that Nebraska, topography and landscape, all of a sudden you run into that in a weird spot in Indiana, and you're
Yep.
like, I know
I know what
exact
to do. Yeah.
I know exactly what to do here, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
And so for me, going to different states, and again, I think on some level, maybe if I would have just stuck to one state and really learned, a
Mhm,
certain
mhm.
topography, and that I might have been really successful doing that too. But I like it this way. It's been
Yep.
fun.
Ma The other thing too is, the people that I've met along the way
Yeah.
here. I have a great group of friends, and, we do a lot of Marco Polo and, techniques. We talk different things, and I tell you, that's really, we all help each other out, and it keeps us more in touch, or gives us more drive
Yep.
because, when you're down, like when I'm sitting in the rain 3 days in a row going, what am I doing here? And those guys are saying, stick it out, man. You got this, man. Just stick to what you know and just do it. And vice versa. That helps out tremendously, and that definitely helps
Yeah.
if you want to become a better hunter. Because if you surround yourself with guys that are supportive and want the same kind of goals as you're going to be that much more successful too.
Yeah, for sure. And then, there's plenty to say negative about social media, but for me personally, that is one of the biggest positives that
Yeah, me
I've
too.
I've come across people who are so much better deer hunter than I am, and been able to communicate with them and learn from them, and even build relationship with some of them, and have a support group. I hunted by myself for the longest time, up until probably 2 years ago, you know. And so building that community has been, I think in the last 2 years, I've grown exponentially in my
Yep.
ability to kill,
Yep,
bucks.
absolutely, man. The friendships and the guys that I met. I mean, it's really weird. You go to Nebraska and you get recognized.
Yeah.
You pull up to a hunt. I know who you are.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And 99% of the people I meet are just positive influences, and so it's great. It's
Yeah.
been a wild ride, and I'm 51, but I'm gonna just keep on motoring as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same here. I know it feels kind of strange because a lot of the people that I do meet on Instagram, they're like 10, 12 years younger than me. And,
yeah,
and I'm the old dude of the camp,
yeah.
It's
I
like,
just honestly, I just started posting stuff on Instagram in the last year here, just because people were that's all these younger guys were talking about is Instagram, and I don't even know. I think maybe have I don't know 1,000 followers on Instagram, not that many, but Facebook is, I'm old, so
yeah.
that's where I cut my teeth. So that I made a lot of friends on there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Yeah. It has been. And that's part of it. Like, you have to enjoy the ride for sure. Right.
Yes, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
awesome.
Love
Hey,
helping other people.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you've been really accessible. I've learned a lot from other podcasts that you've done, and just other guys. It's amazing if you reach out to somebody. They'll, not always, because people get bombarded too,
Right,
but
right.
somebody's going to answer you and
Yeah.
help you along. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I tried to answer as many people as I could. I had a couple guys last year that were messaging me before opening Wisconsin, and with lots of questions, and they were able to get in there and then put the kill on them in the first week.
oh,
And
that's
man, to
awesome.
get that success picture from them with the excitement, it's just nothing beats it, man. I
Yeah,
felt like I shot that buck myself because I kind of got to do the whole thing with them. So yeah,
yeah.
that's way cool.
That
Yeah.
is cool. That is cool. So, real quick, what are you doing right now? Are you out there doing postseason scouting and stuff?
Honestly, I've been pulling a lot of my cameras, getting that some of these cameras been sitting out since August,
Yeah.
July, August, pulling a lot of intel off. And I've been doing some scouting in some new areas. I'm expanding out further. The particular Tri County area where I hunt, uh, we had a decrease in our kill 20%,
Wow.
and in the last 10 years, it's 100% less. I mean, it's just the DNR is giving out so many permits, and people are taking full advantage of that and killing everything that from a CWD scare that they had. So I have to regroup, and I've been scouting some completely new areas. It's a little bit more of a drive from where I'm at, but in the end, drive further, have better chances at a mature buck. So
Yep.
that's where I'm at with that. Um, got plans on going to Indiana, scouting here first weekend in April. I'm supposed to be going by Brian in Illinois. Yeah, so I'm just I'm not a huge shed hunter.
Yeah.
I I kind of feel that's like a door prize, like a participation award for the deer you didn't shoot. And it seems like a lot of guys have made a sport out of it who really aren't real true
Mhm.
um, hunter. You know what I mean? That they'll spend
Oh
more
yeah.
time looking for sheds than they will actually scouting. Which teach your own. I'm fine with that, man. You guys can have them all. I uh, I do stumble across probably maybe 6 or 8 a year, just because I put so many miles in scouting.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's right now. Springtime is the best time to do your scouting. Like I was saying, in the big swamps, you can get in there because the deer aren't in there. Get in there, do your scouting, and get out, and they'll never even know that you were in there. So when they start going
Mhm.
back in there, you already kind of have an idea of where you need to set up. So,
Yeah.
yeah, um,
Yeah. Are you what kind of train are you hunting swamps in Wisconsin?
yep,
Yep.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yep.
Big
Yeah.
swamps, big
Yeah.
swamps.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of working on right now is big swamps where I was hitting the more mediocre swamps. Um, and it's tough right now too in Wisconsin. We 1/3 of our trees are ash,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all dying.
Yep.
And some been dead so long that these big snowstorms that we had are knocking them all over and making some areas just really hard to get into. So it's constantly changing. Now that the or the ash are dying, and we're getting all this other like black brush and stuff growing up, which is changing how the bucks move. It's just it's a constant learning. You can't just say, all right, well, I know this spot's been great for the last 10 years. It's got to be good this year again. It's not always the case. It's
Mm-hmm.
oh, you have to get boots on the ground. And now with the cell cameras, it seems like everybody and their brother gets in those really hard to reach spots, drops the cell camera, and then waits for those deer to kind of per se move in, and then they'll throw a hunt in there. Well,
Mm.
I've learned that that's
Probably too late.
yeah,
Yep.
yep. The chances are pretty good. I kind of feel running 100 cameras. I've got a lot of intel. For every picture of a buck you got on camera, you miss 6 other times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
About the number I'm figuring.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to utilize my camera game. I mean, it just haven't been, I've only been doing it for a couple years.
Mm,
I've got 30 cameras, 15 cell, 15 of the regular SD. I was using cell because I was hunting out of state. So
mm,
I wanted to be able to not like go back and check them all the time. And
mhm.
it's too far to drive. So but I haven't been able to really, I couldn't say that I've really used it all that. What it's done for me is it showed me that the caliber of bucks that I want to hunt are there.
Yeah,
In one situation, which was the big one this year, um, it was really lucky. I just happened to put it in his core area, and that told me I was in his core area. And then so from there I could put the pieces together. So that was the one time that a camera really kind of flued me into a specific area for a buck. But it took 2 years to kill him, so it wasn't
yeah, right.
it,
You didn't sit over the camera and then say, "Oh, he's been through here twice in the last 2 nights. This
no.
is where he's
I,
gonna be." It just gave you the idea that he was there. And you
yeah,
probably could have done the same thing with a regular camera
mm-hmm,
by checking it, but cell camera is a lot more convenient.
yeah,
Well, I only have like 15 cell cams. That gets to
mm-hmm,
be expensive. Let's face it.
It
Unless
does.
Tacticam or somebody wants to sponsor me, which I don't. I'm not that good, but um, it's expensive. And in hill country, in some of the areas I hunt, you can't even get reception.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was
care what
happening to
camera
me.
you get. One camera I put up last year spring, and it was barely getting signal, and then the Leafs came in at Green Up, and that was it. Never that was the that's all the difference it took to like
Uh,
block my signal. But I try to honestly, I get more mature bucks on regular cams and cell cams. And this conversation's kind of been bounced around between me and my friends. Do cell cameras bother mature bucks? I can't say yay, I can't say nay, but I'll tell you what I will say is that my regular cams do get more pictures of mature bucks than my cell cams.
I've seen that in the few years that I've run them. I've had a lot of, and I mine are high, angled down.
Mhm,
I get a lot of one time, like
mhm.
mature buck comes in and he's into that area once with the cell cam, but if I have an SD cam, I'm getting multiple. Like,
Isn't
doesn't
that
seem to.
weird?
It is weird. I
I'm
and
not.
I
That's why it's hard for me to say.
same.
Yeah, cell camera is what screwed me up. But yeah, you got to wonder, man. It is.
I know. Yeah,
I've kind of gotten away from cell cams being a high priority on my list and
yeah,
more tracks in the mud and
same.
uh, rubs and stuff like that is more for me
Hmm.
something more that I'll concentrate on just because this like I said cell cameras have never got me a buck.
Yeah.
Now have
I,
I even regular cams haven't gotten me a buck, but they'll let me know he's in the area.
that's what's it's done for me. I mean, even that buck I killed this year that I said I had pictures of, I didn't have a camera in there this year.
Hmm.
So when I went in, I was going off of tracks, so I had a picture of him in February, so I know he made it through.
Hmm.
And then I went in and I didn't even put cameras back up in that spot. It was such a good spot that I knew, it was going to be okay. And when I went in, I was going off of tracks. I was finding
Hmm.
his tracks, and that's how I hunted him down. This year, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with them all because I'm hunting all out of state again. And so I'm trying to figure out how to utilize those cameras. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I know. So I'm going down to Illinois this weekend. I'll be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, doing 3 days of scouting on a new piece, maybe two pieces. Going back again on Wednesday, scouting with Brian. And then I've got to get to Indiana and find out where I'm not going to hunt Northwestern. I'm going to go down south. And so I got to figure out what to do with these cameras then. I don't know. I'll probably not put any up in Illinois yet. I'm gonna go back in the summertime after the green up because I've learned too many times when you're that far away from home and you put cameras up and then green up
Yeah.
happens. I ended
Yeah.
up having to go back multiple times and readjust those cameras. And
Yep.
then I think I'll probably use cell cams there just I don't know why, just because I'm
Well,
going to.
just because it's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah. And
You
then
sit at home and you get your pictures. What I've done too in the past is for battery power, if I put them up there in the summer, you turn them so it only takes pictures for like one or send 1 hour of the day
that's
or
all I do.
something.
Yeah.
Problem is last year I forgot to turn one back on for the whole time, and all of a sudden hung it up. I brought it back with me from Indiana, and I brought it back with me, and I put it up around here where I knew that there was a lot. And I'm like not getting pictures. I'm like something's not right here. I'm checking it out and this and that. Oh man. So yeah, there is a technique obviously to hanging cameras and
Hmm.
making sure everything's clear out of the way, the sun, and making sure you could check them without crossing that path. But I think the only actual buck that I've killed, mature buck, that I've actually had pictures of before I killed it was this guy right here.
Yeah.
And that was with my buddy Brad Crook. Um, we had pictures of him like 2, 3 years in a row, and finally got him. And man, he was smart.
Yeah.
But other than that, all my other bucks, I shoot them and I go back, look at the cameras, and yeah, I have pictures of them, but after I shot them.
Yeah, that's what happens with me too, is I
Yeah,
realized after I shot them that I had pictures of them. For me, what they do is they just give me reassurance that the caliber of bucks that I want to kill are in the area.
confidence.
Yeah, this confidence.
Confidence kills. I tell people, it's kind of funny. Rendell Eric
Yeah.
hunted with me quite a bit last year, and I hunted with him a year before in Iowa. And every day I wake up and I'd be like, Rendell, today's the day. Today's the day. And then the next day comes around. Nope, today's the day, Rendell. No, no, that wasn't today. All right, today's the day. 30 days in a row. And finally, he's like, every day's a day to you. And I'm like, it is, because positive thinking gives you positive results,
Hmm.
uh, and it really does.
It
Like
does.
you have confidence and you say to yourself, "Today's the day. I got him figured out. We're going in there. I'm gonna kill
Yep.
him." It definitely helps.
I want to go as far as saying you can almost manifest success
Yes.
by having a
Yeah.
positive and really picturing it out, like really thinking through this
Yep.
is what it's going to look like when I do it,
Yeah. That's what
It's
happened
weird.
in Illinois last year.
Same.
Got into an area, couple areas, wasn't really seeing what I wanted to see. Ran into some other hunters, which would normally bring guys down,
Mhm.
and got into a new area. Got in there, ran into some more hunters, but I pushed in a little further. Passed on, I think, was it 2.5 year olds that came out of a bedding area. Went in there the next morning, and I got rained out because of downpours. I didn't even get to sit till dark. Went in there the next morning, and then and shot that mature buck.
Yeah.
It just, I kept saying to myself, I know they're in here. I know they're in here. I just got to get away. Just got to figure out how this system, how this piece works. But you stay positive. You stay
Hmm.
positive. I heard a good buck grunting. I couldn't see him. He was on private though, where because I was on public, I could hear him grunting over there, but I never saw him. So I knew there had to be a good one in the area. But that gave me enough confidence where I just kept going after them. I had no cameras in that area, so actually I brought cameras and hung them in the other areas, and then started hunting them. But yeah, it was a fun hunt. I definitely feel your positive thinking gives you good results.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So
Well, we covered a lot, man. Um,
yeah.
anything else you want to say that I didn't let you say yet?
No, I mean, there's tons of stuff to talk about, but
Yeah.
I feel this is a real good podcast for everywhere from beginners to maybe the elite.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. I appreciate it. I really do. Thanks for all
yeah,
your time. And
yeah, no problem.
where can if people want to reach out to you or at least see what you're doing, where can they find you?
I'm on, I'm in Facebook land under Gary Grunow. Some of my videos, I got videos across a few different YouTube pages. Some are on the hunting beast, some are on public land whitetails. Quite a bit are on Before the Echo with Josh Toker, and his podcast is his show. Um, so, and then actually, there's going to be, might be some coming up here with Brian's channel, Good Sit Productions, I believe it's called.
Awesome.
Check that guy out too. He's really got some good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yep. So
Awesome.
yep.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough. And
Yeah, no problem. Maybe you could do this again sometime.
I'd love to. Yeah, for sure. So again, thanks everybody for coming out and taking a seat on the mat. And we will be back next week, Thursday, with another podcast. And thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. And
Yep, no problem.
we'll definitely have you on again.
All right, sounds good.
All right, awesome. Goodbye, everybody.